My thing, yo.
Ethan Winter scrubbing as usual.
See, this is all it's gonna be for the next hour. Are you sure you want this?
Hey, why not?
Oh, okay.
Hey, how
Do
about
we have any more
the Mets?
yourselves? What?
I didn't say anything.
Okay.
The Red Sox taking 2 out of 3.
Yeah, taking 2 out of 3 from the Mets.
No.
Yeah, fuck the Mets.
Yeah, nobody cares.
All right. Do we have any? Do you have any?
Yeah,
Other,
they'll take
yeah, shut
2 out of
up.
3 games.
Do we
Shut
have?
up, Ethan.
Do you have any other buy or sells besides Jordy Nelson, or besides the Packers making the playoffs without Jordy Nelson?
I had
Oh,
another one today.
What was it?
It was let's see, it was Jay Gruden. Will Jay Gruden last as the Redskins head coach by the midway point of the season?
Oh, that's perfect because the second wild card topic we have is Dan
I
Snyder
gotta.
and RG3 versus Redskins coaches. That's fantastic.
Yeah. He's insane.
Snyder.
Yeah, he's totally insane.
I know. And
What about RG3? He's not going to be the quarter.
what? Wait, what did you say, JR?
Can you not hear me?
No, I hear
I
you.
said
Like break up in the middle of your.
RG3. RG.
Yeah, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. And now he's frozen. All right.
It's just
RG3 will not be back.
Will not be the quarterback. Well, I have him as one of the topics. This is why I wish Sean was here because he actually cares about this stuff.
yeah, I know.
The one episode that is not here, we have a lot of Redskins talk.
We have like all Redskins stuff. Yeah, John Rice left.
Okay, that's fine. And now you left.
My bad. I didn't mean to do that.
That's all right.
I was just seeing if John Rice had actually left, and he did.
Yeah. Said he couldn't hear us well.
Yeah.
I think he was doing it from his phone.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing it from my phone, and I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, what's the song you want to do?
I don't know. I'll introduce it. I'll come up with something. I'll introduce it.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm asking. So you can
Okay. Let's see. It's gonna be Freddie Gibbs. Hang on, I want to make sure I got the right one. Freddie Gibbs. Hang on, I need to remember the name of the song. All right, I got it. What up, Mike?
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good. All right, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm recording now.
Okay.
All right, you ready to go?
Yeah, is he just coming over to play Xbox or whatever?
Yeah, he's just coming over to smoke weed and play PS4.
And like,
Yep.
What's up, Dan?
Not Danny, but okay. All right. All right, let's do it.
All right.
Do you want to introduce or do you want me to introduce?
You can introduce the song. I'll say, I'll start the podcast. How about?
All right, sounds good.
All right. Ready, set, go. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Pulse. I'm Ethan Winter.
I'm Brian Brennan.
And we have an excellent episode here to share with you. And Brian, why don't you introduce us?
Sean McNiff, though.
Yeah, Sean McNiff. He went to a wedding this weekend, and I'm going to be at a wedding next weekend. So it's wedding season, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, so
I've still never been to one, so I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
But yeah, and here's Brian to introduce the song.
Yes. To start this week's episode of the Sports Pulse, I would like to give us "Deeper" by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib off of my favorite rap album of the last 2 years or so, "Pinata" by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. So this is "Deeper" by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib.
All right.
Yeah.
So starting off with Major League Baseball, and more specifically, the Toronto Blue Jays are red hot. They have a Major League leading 186 run differential plus 186. And they're on pace to break the single season home run record for a team. I believe they're at 184. The record, I think, is 240 set by the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
I forget what year that was. But
mid-90s sometime when everybody was taking steroids.
Yeah, with Griffey, John Olerud, Edgar Martinez, those Mariner teams. Probably.
Young A-Rod.
Yeah. So yeah, and the Blue Jays won again today. And Edwin Encarnacion was a solo home run shy of the home run cycle yesterday. He hit a grand slam, a 3-run home run, and a 2-run home run, and a career-high 9 RBIs. And he hit another home run today, setting the Blue Jays franchise record for RBIs in 1 month of 35.
And he's got a 25-game hitting streak, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's 25 or something like that.
So Edwin Encarnacion is red hot. You do not want to face the Blue Jays right now. I believe the Red Sox face the Blue Jays later this week after their series with the Yankees that starts tomorrow.
Oh, really? That's this week?
Yeah. Final series at Fenway between those two teams this season.
Awesome.
But so
Edwin Encarnacion, I was thinking about it yesterday when he did hit those 3 home runs. He did a couple of things. I was thinking, it's a good thing he didn't. That, of his 3 home runs, none of them were solo home runs, which I thought was cool. So he was pretty much maximizing. He was maximizing offense all the way there, driving in as many runs as he possibly could. I think he said, he had 9 RBIs yesterday?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so he did that, and I think with the month that he has had, he's probably going to end up being player of the month for August.
Yeah.
And I think that probably plays him into MVP contention a little bit. I mean, he's got a lot of people to contend with, but I think it puts him at least in the conversation, especially the way the Blue Jays are playing right now.
Right, and one of the MVP candidates that we've been talking about all season in the American League is on Encarnacion's team, and Josh Donaldson.
Absolutely.
To mash. And the Blue Jays, after winning yesterday 15-1, they won again today 9-2. But the Yankees, they've scored a lot of runs lately as well. 20 runs today in a 20-6 win over the Braves, and then I think they scored 13 runs last night in a 13-4 victory
It was yesterday. They won 3-1, and on Friday night, I think they won like 15-4 or something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a high scoring weekend for the Yankees. Obviously, they won 15-4 on Friday.
Yeah.
I think it was 20-5 or 20-6
It was
today.
20-6 today.
Yeah.
20-6.
So yeah, it was a nice bounce back weekend for the Yankees. I think I work with an Atlanta Braves fan, and he told me before the series, because the Yankees came into the series having lost 2 out of 3 to the Astros, who it's looking more and more every day like they're going to make the playoffs too. Um, they had just lost 2 out of 3 to the Astros, and so I was talking to my fellow a coworker at WXII about the Braves. And I was like, "Hey, Yankees play the Braves this week." And he's like, "Yeah, you've been struggling, but that's about to stop." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're terrible."
Yeah.
And then I saw it this weekend, and he's
Yeah, they're
not
terrible.
wrong. They're pretty bad.
Yeah. I believe they're worse than the Red Sox. Is that the Red
They're
Sox?
at 54 and 76.
Yeah, so the Red Sox are 6 games better than the Braves. And before we move on, we would just like to extend our condolences to the family of the fan that fell from the upper deck last night during the Braves-Yankees game. Very scary moment.
Yes.
And we wish the best to his family and our sincerest condolences. But speaking of the Red Sox in a season of not a lot of highs. One thing to look forward to is David Ortiz's march to 500 home runs. He hit his 494th home run today, and they're trying to play spoiler a little bit. They came into the series with the Mets facing the Mets' three-headed monster of their top 3 starting pitchers and came away with winning the series 2 out of 3. They beat the Mets on Matt Harvey's start. They beat the Mets yesterday on DeGrom's start, and DeGrom actually took the loss. But they weren't able to win today during Syndergaard's start. But so
Yeah.
one of the few bright spots of the Red Sox season happened this weekend. And anything else in regards to? I do have to say that the Twins a while ago looked like that they kind of fallen out of the race for the wild card entirely. They're only 1.5 games back of the Texas Rangers for the.
Oh, they're back in it.
So they're back in it.
They're back in it, and it's been a lot of teams for that second wild card that you kind of thought were dead. Well, really, the 2 teams that have the best chance at it right now are Texas and the Minnesota Twins. And you thought a lot of them were dead right before the trade deadline. I think a lot of people were confused as to why Texas went out and got Cole Hamels. And I think they're showing why now.
Right.
Obviously, 68-61. Right now in the wild card game, they've won 4 in a row, 7-3 in their last 10. Sweeping the Orioles this week, who continue to fall out of it more and more each day. At 1-9 in their last 10. So Texas has played themselves right into the playoff picture.
Yeah, and the Orioles now 5.5 games out of the second wild card, only 3 games ahead of the Red Sox for 4th place in the American League East. That's where Red Sox fans are at right now. They just don't want to finish in last place in the division. But then another kind of a surprising turn of events. The Angels just absolutely have fallen off the face of the earth. They've struggled. They're now 3.5 games out of the second wild card, and really, that's what allowed Texas to get back in it. Is the Angels faltering here. And I believe a month ago, it seemed like the Angels had that second wild card in hand pretty handedly, but now they're completely out of it, or out of the wild card spot, but they're still trying to stay within the second wild card race.
And this could be a season of a lot of changes in that that AL West, with the Astros in first place and with the Angels beginning to fall off a bit, and with Texas regaining their playoff form, it could be a bit of a shakeup in that division.
Yeah, and the Nationals, which is who was everyone's pick at the beginning of the season, pretty much to win the World Series or at least make the World Series to start the season. They are 7.5 games out of the second wild card and 5.5 games out of the National League East, and they may miss the playoffs entirely.
Yeah, we'll see if the Nationals kind of rally this last couple of months, or this last month here. One thing the Mets are known for is late season collapses. So we'll see if that holds true again. I think it'd be pretty hilarious to see, but I don't know if it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, it certainly appears that the Mets have the pitching to withstand another late season collapse, but still about 30 games left of baseball left to be played before the playoffs start. And we're down to the final stretch run here in the regular season of Major League Baseball. Moving on from the big leagues to the Little League Diamond, the Little League World Series just concluded earlier today in a wild game, today being August 30th, 2015. There were a total of 29 runs scored in the Little League World Series championship game between Japan and Lewisberry, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania. And it was a wild one. The first inning saw a total of 12 runs scored, 2 runs scored by Japan in the top of the first, and then Lewisberry put up a 10 spot in the bottom of the first inning to jump ahead 10-2. But after the first inning, Lewisberry was only able to score 1 run the rest of the way, and Japan just chipped away. They scored 7 times in the top of the second inning and took it 18-11, the final score. But it's the highest scoring Little League World Series championship game ever in the Little League World Series.
And Japan keeps on winning World Series. They keep on winning Little League World Series titles. They're just dominating as a nation. I think they won it in 2012 as well. And I think won.
And
Sorry, what was that?
Well, and this specific Little League, Tokyo Sakado, I think. But this individual Little League in Japan, this Little League organization in Japan, it's their 3rd Little League World Series title.
That's dominating the world right there.
So this Little League is no stranger to Little League World Series titles. And for whatever reason, the United States still continues to struggle in the Little League World Series championship game. The United States' last Little League World Series champion came in 2011. And so it's been all international since then for the last 4 years.
And and obviously every time it's Japan versus the U.S., I always get a little conflicted because I used to live in Japan, so I want to see them do well. That's the only other nation other than the U.S. I want to see do well. What do you want to say, Mike?
Yeah, I wanted to say I don't watch the Little League World Series anymore, but I used to. And I remember, I forgot what years, but like 2 years in a row, Japan played a team that was from Georgia, and both years they lost. Do you remember that?
Did Japan lost to Georgia?
Like Japan lost to a team from Georgia, like a U.S. team, and I think both teams were from Georgia 2 years ago.
I think I remember that too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think I
different
remember
teams,
that.
but they were both from Georgia, and they both beat Japan.
Yeah, I think I remember that too.
It was awesome.
But I always get a little conflicted because I love Japan still. I haven't been since I was since I was 9 years old, and so I love Japan, and I want to see them do well. So congratulations to them. But earlier today, when I first turned on this game, I saw they did an overhead shot of the scoreboard, and it said, how many runs did Japan score in the first? It was like 5, right?
No, Japan scored 2 in the first.
Okay, yeah. So I turned it on, and it says Japan, or it says Pennsylvania 10, Japan 2, and the scoreboard didn't have space to write 10, so it just had a 0. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's a typo. Japan's up 2-0. Why does it say 10? And so I was so confused, and then I realized, oh my God.
Yeah, I remember that shot. So I guess maybe whenever if they make a renovation and they replace the scoreboard, maybe they'll make sure there's room for double digits in each inning next time.
That's what they should do.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Personally, though, I think because Little League has pushed back the cutoff date for eligibility in terms of birthdays, older and older players are now able to play in the Little League World Series. So you're starting to see more and more 13-year-olds, and these kids are these 13.
They're men.
They're huge. They're huge on that Little League diamond.
They're men.
Yeah.
They've had their because they're men.
Right. And so we've seen some monstrous home runs this year in the Little League World Series. We saw a kid from Pennsylvania actually hit a 371-foot bomb, absolute bomb. I mean, that's a home run in a lot of major league ballparks.
Yeah.
So
center, but that's definitely, you measure it anywhere else, that's
right.
a home run.
Yeah, and so
that's a no doubter.
Yeah, and so my thinking is because these kids are getting bigger, faster, and stronger, that maybe Little League should consider making the field a little bit bigger, maybe closer to the Pony League size field, and because I know it's practically impossible to turn a double play in the Little League because the field is so they're
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen.
I mean, these kids do it because these kids are professionals. They're animals. Like these kids are so much better at Little League than we were. So I mean, like, it's
that's even
with them do things.
And that's even with the composite aluminum bats, where the ball doesn't jump as much off these new bats anymore like they used to, and they're still hitting 380-foot bombs in the Little League World Series. So I think they should consider making the base paths maybe 65 to 70 feet long, and maybe put the pitcher's mound at like 50 feet from home plate. And I mean, the outfield in Williamsport is 225 all the way around, but maybe make it pull the fences back a little bit too.
Maybe make it 250 or something.
I don't know if they would make it 250, but I think they could make it at least 235. It depends how far back that back wall is at the Little League World Series at Williamsport at that stadium. If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean these kids are not like us when we were in the Little League. They're huge.
No, these kids are beasts. I mean, yeah, I think they need to do something at this point because really, yeah, you said it. I mean, these kids are much bigger than. I mean, they're just getting bigger and bigger every year. the park can't contain some of these kids. You remember last year with Jackie Robinson West?
Right.
Those kids kept hitting bomb home run after bomb home run, and the park just couldn't contain them. And it was the same thing this year with Pennsylvania.
Right.
And in this championship game, Japan hit 5 home runs.
Right.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. Pennsylvania, I don't remember how many they hit, but they definitely hit more than 1, 2 today.
Yeah, I think Pennsylvania came into the tournament hitting a total of 80 home runs throughout the entire summer, up until the Little League World Series.
That's insane.
So yeah, that's ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Speaking of the Little League World Series, they lost a member of their broadcast team because of a controversial tweet. And Curt Schilling sent out a tweet with a picture of Hitler, and on the graphic, it had the words that said, in 1940, 7% of all Germans were Nazis, and now 5 to 10% of all Muslims are extremists. And above the, and then at the bottom of the graphic it said, see how that turned out. And then above it, above the graphic, Schilling added his own commentary that said, these are interesting numbers to think about. And he just left it at that pretty much. I mean, he deleted it 10 minutes after, but it's still he was still suspended and by ESPN. And I agree that he should have been suspended by ESPN, which they did. But I don't think any more punishment. I don't think Schilling should face any more consequences other than just being pulled off of ESPN for a week or two. Because, I mean, if you really look into the tweet, he said extremists, and he wasn't characterizing all Muslims. He was only talking about extremists. So, and he was stating facts too. So, to me, I think and I don't agree with Schilling's politics at all. He's as far right wing as you could get, and I'm more left of center in politics.
Yeah.
I'm a Democrat, so I don't agree with Schilling's politics in general. But I mean, I don't really see anything wrong with his tweet because he was pointing out facts, and I don't since when did facts become offensive? I mean, that's my point. So
I don't really have an opinion on it personally. I mean, I don't like Curt Schilling. I mean, I never have, going back to when he was a player, and
right.
I don't think that what he said was smart, and I don't think that. I mean, I just don't like Curt Schilling, so I don't really have much of an opinion on this. Like, I didn't even know he was on the Little League World Series.
Yeah.
And so obviously I disagree with what he said because I disagury with his politics too. I mean, I don't really care about his punishment.
I don't necessarily. Sorry, Brian. I don't disagree with what he said, with what his tweet. I think it was stupid that he tweeted it out, but I don't.
You just have to be careful with stuff like that. I mean, it's just like when you're a public figure like that, you need to think of, you know, what you say before you say it. Realize that, you know, if you say something like this, it's going to incite an opinion, and a lot of people are gonna think that you're gonna look dumb. And so he has to be smarter than that, in my opinion. That's really all my opinion is on it, really.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I don't think he should have tweeted it out. I don't think it was smart that he tweeted it out. I don't disagree with what he tweeted.
If you have an opinion like that, you got to keep it to yourself.
Oh, definitely, especially if you're a public figure. But in terms of people calling for his job and saying ESPN should fire him, I think that's a little ridiculous and a little over the the top and a little oversensitive. I mean, it wasn't smart. It wasn't smart that he tweeted it out, but to me, you shouldn't be fired over that. I think a suspension is just as fine, and he already recognizes that it was dumb that he tweeted it out, and he should have never tweeted it out. So it's not like he didn't get it. But moving on to another wild card topic, and it's a shame that Sean cannot join us this week because the next two topics are very Redskins oriented.
Hail to the Redskins.
And earlier today, I saw an article, I believe Deadspin had an article on it, and I think ESPN was where I saw the initial report. But there's a report out that the Redskin coaches and personnel and player personnel are ready to move on from Robert Griffin III, which I agree with. But
I don't think there'll be much argument, to be honest.
Right. But Dan Snyder is just continues to be down and doesn't want to move on from him and doesn't realize that the team needs to move on from him.
Yeah.
He's just so infatuated with Robert Griffin III. I mean, you saw it as soon as when they drafted him, he traded the Rams like the house in order to get that pick to draft RG3. And I mean, he was great for that first season, but after that, he's hasn't been able to stay on the field, and I think it's time for the Redskins to move on. But for some reason, Dan Snyder just doesn't see that and doesn't get it. And it's not surprising too, because he continues to resist against the Washington Redskins name change as well.
Dan Snyder, to me, just seems to be one of those people who is just like, some people can take criticism and some people cannot. And it's pretty obvious to me more and more every day that Dan Snyder is one of the people who cannot. And he feels like because he gets criticized so much, in my opinion, that he feels like he has to do it his own way almost. And just completely ignore everybody else, and because he feels like he's got the most power and he should just ignore everybody else and do what he feels like. And it's just something about him just gets so under my skin.
I mean,
with RG3,
Dan Snyder's like Roger Goodell in that sense, in doing whatever.
I think that Dan Snyder he doesn't want people to criticize him at this point. I think that the only reason he's holding on to Robert Griffin is because, he was the one, they traded all these picks for Robert Griffin so they could get him and have him be the franchise quarterback. And he doesn't want to have people say that, he's wrong and that, this is all his fault and it was a mistake. But in doing so, he's just making himself look dumber and dumber each and every day.
I mean, and this is kind of like, I know, in regards to RG3, it's kind of like how the Red Sox keep trotting out Hanley Ramirez out in left field, despite being the worst defensive left fielder in baseball, or defensive outfielder in baseball, just because they paid him all that money and they don't want to be wrong about him, and they want to get their money's worth from him. But it's totally fine. Dan Snyder needs to realize, no one is going to criticize him for moving on from RG3 at this point. What they're going to criticize him for is the fact that he's holding on to RG3 when he's damaged goods. And so at the time, no one criticized Dan Snyder for getting RG3. He worked for RG3 was great for 1 year, but now at this point, yes, you see that he he hasn't been able to get to nearly as close as to what he was that first season, and it's time to move on now. But I mean, Dan Snyder, I think what you're trying to say is like Dan Snyder doesn't want to like be proven wrong about it. And he doesn't want to admit that RG3 ended up being a bust.
Yeah.
But I mean, that stuff happens. And actually, I think moving forward, like NFL teams should be more weary of mobile quarterbacks because it's been proven over time that mobile quarterbacks aren't as durable as the traditional pocket passer. And I think the only way that a mobile quarterback can be successful is if they're like Steve Young or Russell Wilson, in which they're strategic about when they run. And they pick their spots when they run. And they know when to get out of bounds or slide instead of trying to take the hit and get the extra yard. And they run not to make plays, but to extend them. That's what Russell Wilson does. That's what Steve Young did. And that's what made them be so successful. But if you're just a wild card running quarterback like RG3, Michael Vick, and we'll see what happens with Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. But I don't think those types of quarterbacks that are run-first quarterbacks will ever be successful long-term in the NFL.
Well, they didn't really have much of a choice at the time, I feel, like with drafting RG3, because he was the best quarterback and the best player available at the time. And his first season, he was outstanding. But, you're right. I'm sure they would have loved to have Andrew Luck, but Luck didn't fall into their lap.
Well, I mean, I'm not criticizing the Redskins for picking RG3 because you're right that he was the best player available, and the Redskins at the time needed a quarterback.
Right.
So that was, I mean, they needed to. That was the pick to make. But I'm just saying, in general, moving forward in future drafts, I think teams need to be more weary if they can help it. If they have a better option to stay away from the run first quarterbacks and the option quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, it may work in college, but it doesn't work in the NFL. Teams adapt in the NFL to defend against those mobile quarterbacks, and so I mean, they're not long term. They're not successful.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I mean, I think that from now on they're going to be a lot smarter when it comes to drafting quarterbacks. And I personally wonder where the Redskins go from here, to be honest, because I don't think Jay Gruden's going to last much of the season either.
Well, speaking of Jay Gruden, we're killing it on transitions today.
Transition.
Buy or sell Jay Gruden lasting the season as the Redskins head coach.
Me personally, I am selling this. I don't think the Redskins are going to be good this year. I know Sean's going to probably disagree with me because he loves the Redskins. But
that's the guy that he's not here.
Yeah, exactly. But my theory is that the Redskins are really not going to be a good football team this season, and somebody's going to have to pay the price for that. And obviously, there's some disagreement between Jay Gruden and the whack job that we just talked about. And I think that it's eventually, if RG3 does in fact stay, and if RG3 does in fact come back, that's going to end up forcing. I think the losing is just going to add up, and it's going to force Daniel Snyder's hand. There's a new GM in town this year. I can't remember his name. Sean will know his name, but I can't remember his name. And usually when there's a new GM, they want to bring in their person. So Jay Gruden, I think, is going to be on the outside looking in, and I think it's going to happen relatively soon. I think it's going to be by the midpoint of the season.
Well, and talking about Jay Gruden, I think. I mean, I agree with you, Brian. I don't think the Redskins are going to be good this year. And I mean, we talked about the power struggle between the coaching staff and the player personnel and
Right.
Snyder, the owner. And ultimately, no matter how hard the coaching staff tries to fight back, ultimately, especially when you have an owner like Dan Snyder, the owner will always win. And we've seen this before. We saw this last year, 2 years ago with Mike Shanahan. He got the boot.
Yep.
Shanahan did not like RG3 and wanted to play Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
And you saw what happened with him. Shanahan got the door. And so I think it's because Dan Snyder is hanging on so desperately to RG3 and so desperately wants RG3 to be successful, as any Redskins fan should. I mean, you always want to really see a player succeed, but you also have to at some point recognize when it's time to move on. But I think Jay Gruden is going to get the door eventually, especially if RG3 is healthy enough in which he can play. Obviously, I believe it's going to be Kirk Cousins is going to start week 1 because RG3 is injured. But whenever RG3 is healthy enough to play, that's where it's really going to get interesting in Washington, and that's where we'll really see what happens in Washington.
I mean, they're not going to be a good team this year, no matter who the quarterback is. So, I mean, I'll be interested to see how RG3 does, because in many ways, I mean, RG3 could be playing himself, if he is playing, to showcase for another team. If Dan Snyder, finally realizes he isn't the answer.
Right. Although in the NFL, it's not like you need to trade him to get something back. I mean, that's always nice.
Yeah.
But in the NFL, you could just cut a player and you won't lose anything.
Yeah, which is a nice benefit, but you know what I'm saying.
I mean,
right?
It sucks for the players.
If he does have something left in the tank.
And it sucks for the players that that's the way that the NFL works, but you can also understand why it's like that from an owner's standpoint, because the owners invest a lot of money into these players. And the NFL, you see more injuries in the NFL than you do in any other sport. The risk is a lot higher to get injured in the NFL, and so I mean these owners would be losing a lot of money if all the money was guaranteed, like it is in most other sports. But also at the same time, it really screws the players.
Absolutely.
And I actually think for a number of reasons, I think the players should strike or at least file a complaint to the Federal Labor Board
NFL suggestion box and put it on Roger Goodell's desk.
Yes.
He'll get back to it in a couple of weeks, months, years.
Yeah. I think the NFL Players Union should threaten to strike, or at the very least file a complaint to the Labor Board saying that the NFL and Roger Goodell is not holding up their end of the bargain in this collective bargaining agreement. But that will get me off on a whole nother tangent that we don't really want to go to right now. So speaking of players getting injured, it will bring us to another buy or sell topic. Jordy Nelson out for the season with a torn ACL in the second preseason game, which brings up the debate about the worth of preseason games and is it worth it to have. I think, along with a lot of other fans, I think they should cut it down to 2 preseason games, maybe 3 at most, but no more than that.
Yeah.
But so now the buy or sell is buy or sell the Packers make the playoffs without Jordy Nelson.
Personally, I think that the NFC North is just so it's not good. I mean, there are good players in the NFC North on teams other than the Packers, like Megatron and Adrian Peterson and guys like that, who are on, who are great. They're great players, but they're just not enough, I think, to overtake the Packers as long as Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. It's like you asked me the same thing about the AFC East, and I'll say the same thing. Like, people are saying the Dolphins look great. Do you think they're going to beat the Patriots? No. So I'll say the same thing with that. As long as Aaron Rodgers is the Packers quarterback, I don't think that anybody's going to take him down. I mean, he's the MVP. He's the MVP for a reason. And I think he's going to show it with Jordy Nelson out. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year, but I still think they're the best team in that division.
Right.
So I'm buying it.
I'm buying it as well. I think the Packers are going to finish at the very least 10-6 without Jordy Nelson. I actually think the Vikings have a chance to make the playoffs at 10-6, maybe probably finish in second in the NFC North. But you mentioned the AFC East, Brian. If Tom Brady's suspension is upheld and he's out for the 4 games, I don't think it's as big of a slam dunk that the Patriots win the AFC East this year as it would have been had if Brady plays all 16 games, because the AFC East has improved a lot.
I knew if I brought up Tom Brady, we'd start talking about the Patriots.
Well, I mean, but I mean, it's true. It's true. Like, I don't think the AFC East is as big of a slam dunk for the Patriots if Tom Brady is out for 4 games, because the Dolphins have gotten better. Ryan Tannehill is the second best starting quarterback in that division, and he's actually improved quite a bit. I mean, I wouldn't take him on my team or have him start on my team, but he's really the second best quarterback in that division. And then the Jets got better on defense, especially, and the Bills have gotten better as well. They have one of the best defenses on paper, at least, in the NFL. So I think the AFC East is a lot harder than it has been in years past. I think there's going to be a lot of jumbled up teams from teams 2 through 4. And so I think it's going to be a tight division race in the AFC East this year. But we'll talk more about that next week in our
great opinion on the Packers.
National Communist Football League.
Really great. I'm glad we got that opinion about the Packers in there.
All right. The Packers are in there. And do you have a walk-off, Brian?
Yeah, I do. Do you have anything to say? Because I kind of want to go last.
I think I thought I had one, but I kind of forgot. So do you want to just go ahead first?
Yeah, I just want to close out the show. Obviously, this as somebody who works at a TV station, this hasn't been the best of weeks. Obviously, with the events that occurred in Roanoke, Virginia. So I just want to make sure that I get it out there that everybody around the country, at least I hope so, this podcast included, stands with WDBJ in Roanoke, Virginia, after what's really been a horrible week for that station, and really anybody who works in news is just absolutely devastated by what happened, because it hits close to home for a lot of people. It could happen to anybody, really. It has happened, but this is the first time I think that somebody's actually been murdered on live television like this. But it could happen. It goes through your mind so much as somebody who works in news. So I just wanted to say we stand with WDBJ. Doing my silent protest. I'm wearing 2 wristbands from WXII, one on each hand for Allison Parker and Adam Ward. And, that's all I have to say.
All right. I think when we edit it, we can put that last.
Yeah.
So my walk-off is, so there have been actually, now I remember what it was. So earlier this week, longtime Red Sox play-by-play broadcaster Don Orsillo was unceremoniously fired from NESN, and he won't be coming back next season. He will finish out the year, however, behind the mic, but every time I'm watching a Red Sox game, I'll always have that in the back of my mind that this must be really awkward for Don Orsillo. And I mean, he's calling his last 30 games as the announcer for the Red Sox. And I mean, the Red Sox was his dream job, or it is his dream job. He's turned down offers from TBS a few years ago that offered him more money, but he turned it down because this is what he wanted to do. This was his dream. He grew up here. He grew up rooting for the Red Sox. And, I mean, he did not want to go anywhere else. He was loyal. I mean, this literally was his dream job. I mean, the more I hear about how much Don Orsillo loves calling games for the Red Sox and how much this was his dream job, it kind of reminded me, wow, he was like me. He's like me. Like, I'm like a young Don Orsillo growing up. Like, the Red Sox are his dream. The Red Sox are my dream to call. And I mean, it's took Red Sox Nation by surprise. I'm shocked, and I was absolutely shocked when I first heard. And apparently, it had something to do with the programming director at NESN, Joseph Marr. For whatever reason, he did not like Don Orsillo. And it's a shame that Don Orsillo was fired. And, I mean, he started with the Red Sox in 2001. His first ever game that he called was Hideo Nomo's no-hitter. And he's really the only voice that I remember calling Red Sox games. So it's really a big shock to me, big shock to Red Sox Nation. Dave O'Brien will be replacing him next year. Dave O'Brien is an excellent broadcaster. I think he's a great broadcaster, but really I did not think that it was necessary for a change. Don's a great broadcaster as well. Don and Jerry are a great team together, and I actually thought that Jerry would be fired before Don Orsillo was.
I think he should be fired. Like, I think that honestly, now that Don Orsillo is gone, I think it creates a perfect chance for them to get rid of Jerry Remy, because I know you guys love him. I don't think Jerry Remy's is that good of an announcer, but
I mean Jerry Remy used to be one of the best baseball analysts around. I remember early in the early 2000s, he used to sometimes do color for games on Fox.
Yeah.
And so, but obviously the past few years, he's had personal issues with his son, health problems himself. And actually this year, it was kind of like a renaissance year for Jerry Remy. But I mean, personally, I would have liked to see Dennis Eckersley take over for Jerry Remy. I think Eck is great. I think he's a better color analyst than Jerry Remy is. He's the best color analyst or best baseball analyst in baseball, I think. But it's a shame that they fired Don Orsillo, and I mean, Dave O'Brien is a great broadcaster, but there really was no need to dismiss Don for it. And Tom Werner, one of the Red Sox owners, who's in charge of the media and broadcast aspect of the Red Sox, he said that they made the change because this was their chance to get Dave O'Brien. But it's not like you're making a huge improvement by going from Don Orsillo to Dave O'Brien. It's the improvement is not that. I mean, it's not that great. It's not like Don was terrible that you needed to make this change. I mean, you could have lived without him and it would have been fine, or lived with Don and it would have been fine. But it's interesting, and it's a shame that Don Orsillo was fired. I stand with Don. I stand with WDBJ, and that's the end of the Sports Pulse this episode. Thanks for joining in, and thanks for listening. Continue to listen on. You can download our episodes on iTunes at the Sports Pulse. Follow us on Twitter at _Sports Pulse. Or did I get that right? Or is it at the Sports Pulse?
I think it's the Sports _Pulse, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. We should probably remember that.
Okay. You can also follow us on Facebook at the Sports Pulse. And with that, I'd like to sign off. Free Brady, fire Goodell. I'm editing it, so I'm not editing that out. So, free Brady, fire Goodell.
I was hoping that we could